Hello and welcome back to Love Through It. I am your host, Lianna, and here we go. We are having an adventure today. So last week, if you weren't here, was my first solo episode. And it was really easy to do initially because I got guidance towards, okay, talk about this one thing. And so I felt safe doing it, even though I know initially it was a little bit of a, I don't know, self-conscious, awkward attempt, but I feel like I got in the flow. And I have nerves again and lots of energy. There's lots of energy present today, which is really great. Um, and I had a really amazing channeling session right before this that I will share. Um, but before that, last week, it was easy because I felt like I had a plan. And this week, I was very much guided towards, don't have too much of a plan. And that is terrifying. And so much of my journey, especially the past 5 years, has been getting comfortable in the unknown. And for all of us humans, the unknown is really scary. Our minds, especially, really want to understand and control and try to plan for things because there's a bit of a negativity bias the way we think, right? And we're always looking to survive, to protect ourselves. So it's this natural thing. But what we don't realize is in the uncertainty, in the unknown, is also everything. And everything you want, everything you don't know you want, a life, experiences, things that are far more beautiful than you can ever imagine. And so here I am being like, oh shit, I have to start this in the unknown. Why? And I'll back it up a little. So last week felt good. I mean, it was a little, getting into it was a bit uncomfortable. And then I had moments, I remember halfway through, where I was like, you're talking too much. This is too much. You're too much. And I kept being like, no, it's fine. You could always just make it a second episode, like cut it in half. It's too long. You can cut it in half. But there was almost this like internal barometer that was like trying to keep me quiet and smaller and appropriate. And I kept having to override that. It's like, this is too much of you. This is too weird. This is too uncomfortable. And I had to be like, no, shh. And the moments when I was able to quiet it and open and flow, it felt really good. And I feel it even, coming into this, there's a part of me that can't help but be self-conscious. And again, this is a big part of my journey. I'm realizing is how do I allow myself to be the fullness of who I am, to allow the fullness of who I am, to embrace it, to love it, to celebrate it, to take up space, to communicate in ways that felt impossible before. So this is all part of my journey. And so afterwards, I felt good, initially good, and then spiraled into sort of nothingness and bad. And what I really came to understand was there was nothing to indicate success because the success was in the doing, not in the outcome. And I know I've talked about this before, but I really tried hard and I got better and better at it when I was an actor to really divorce the idea of the audition is for the job. I was like, okay, everything is moment to moment in life. Every moment is new. I need to go and just have a performance and let go. And what's meant for me will come for me. And it was a really beautiful way to look at life. And last week sort of felt the same. But there was a part of my brain that's like, how do you know if you're successful? What are people going to say or think? And it was like, no, the actual practice here is how do I just show up and listen to my internal guidance, my guidance system, my guides? Because when I look back on my life, like so many others, I didn't listen. And that made me sick and, tired and miserable in a lot of facets of my life. And just starting to listen to the whisper and the gentle nudge from within allowed my body to heal. So I have had, physical evidence of my intuition causing really beautiful things in my life. First of all, just vibrant health, right? And beyond that, it started to create this life that was exactly what I wanted, but had no idea how to get there because my brain would never have created this. And it continues to do this for me, which is very confusing. So I've gotten very comfortable in the unknown, but this is just a new step outside of my comfort zone. And I realized after last week, I was uncomfortable because I had stepped outside of my comfort zone. And I think that in life, if you want to fulfill your dreams, you want to fulfill what you feel like your purpose is, or just have a really good time, you have to continue to expand outside of that. And I've sort of made that my job. I'm into chasing fear a little bit. And this moment in my life, I've realized this is the next scariest thing. This is what I'm called to do. And there's so many parts of my brain that just want me to shut up or be smaller or think this is totally strange. Or self-indulgent, or like, who does she think she is taking up so much space? And I have to be like, you know what? That's none of my business. I know in the past when I followed my pings, my intuition, my initial internal guidance, and then later external guidance, it brought me healing and beautiful things. So here we are again. We're just doing it again. But every time the stakes are higher, it gets scarier and the voices are louder. And I would always talk about this when I used to teach nutrition for a performance class many moons ago in New York, where, I still am. Meditation, I think, is one of the best things you can do for yourself, not only for your body, because it's anti-inflammatory and anti-aging, and it helps with your blood pressure. And, the list goes on and on. It helps with your immune system and your microbiome, like all of it. It also helps you understand that your brain is not the only show in town and your thoughts are not everything. And this is a little bit what I was having a discussion about with my channel. We'll get into it. But, you really have to understand that you have to create space. And every time we do something outside of our comfort zone, new, different, scary, our brain's going to get really loud and lie to us because it's just trying to keep us safe. But it doesn't know the difference between like us being like chased by a tiger and us, going on stage for the first time to do stand up, which is something we're dying to do, but feels like death to our system. And I would talk about how on days where I had just like a regular commercial audition, like something that I did all the time, I could like run out the door, run down the stairs, get into like take the train, get to the studio, get to the casting director's office, go in, be myself, have fun, leave, not think about it. But as the stakes got higher, maybe it was a callback for a TV show or for producers, all of a sudden I would leave the house and I was like, you left the curling iron on. You're going to fall down the stairs. And I would get over this, but the one that got really loud often was in really high stakes auditions. My brain would start to be like, you don't know your lines, you don't know your lines, you don't know your lines. And on days where I wasn't well resourced, where I was tired or maybe hadn't eaten the right thing, or, there was other things going on causing stress, if I believed those thoughts, they would be true and I would drop a line or I would kind of fumble the whole thing. But on days where I was well rested, I'd eaten the proper thing, I moved, I really took care of myself, I could completely dismiss those thoughts. So this year, I'm facing this all over again because this week it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, you're just going to go without a plan and not take up space and, all of this. And I was sitting with it. And I think there's two parts to this, which I think there's two parts to everything we do, right? One part is always your personal growth journey, what you're here to do, how you're here to learn and grow. And the cool part is there's always another side to that. Your journey, what you're meant to do, how you heal has another beautiful role that helps humanity. And maybe not in the beginning stages, but over time it will. So you owe it to us to do this work, right? So here I am being like, okay, what's the point? What's the point? What's the point? And at like the small me level, it's like, oh, I just need to like get over this fear of authenticity. But on the bigger level, it's like, no, what we're doing and what I'm being an example of and what I'm contributing is the idea of, whoa, unstructured creativity. It was so interesting because I have these moments where I'm really starting to understand my channel more and more. I can sit down and, if I'm in the right state, really have a conversation and get new information. But I also have moments in my life where I will get essentially downloads and it will integrate in what I'm explaining. Or I'll be talking about something and it will start to integrate into my explanation and give me new information. So yesterday, I was talking to Claire, my friend, co-host, producer extraordinaire, the most wonderful person. And she was asking me how I felt about today and last week. And I started to accidentally channel the idea, and I hadn't thought of this and I hadn't realized it, but it goes back to something I learned a couple of years ago, was that if I'm able to show up and creatively express and just be present and allow creativity and life to flow through me, initially I'm going to be rusty, right? A lot of my own personal fears, beliefs, hangups are going to come in, and my brain is not used to this. This is new and scary. So I'm going to get a lot of stuff. I'm going to get a lot of feedback that's unhelpful, and I'm going to want to plan, and I'm going to want to control, and I'm going to want to show up and be smaller, or I'm going to edit myself as I'm talking, right? Where essentially it's like, you need to practice like getting used to this, because when you can be authentically expressed, then you can bring the genius or flow or creativity or your guidance system. I think, and I know creativity and channeling is the same. It's no different, which is why sometimes you go to a concert, or, you see a musician or a sports player. I'm very into sports, obviously. An athlete, I think is what they're called. But you see someone who's doing something extraordinary, and it's just, they get into the flow. They're out of the way. They're allowing life and pure creativity to come through them. And for me, it was like, okay, this is the next process for me to actively be able to channel, because this is a new skill for me. Initially was very judgmental. I didn't believe it. I was very afraid of it. Now, it was funny, in this session we were having before this, I was watching my thoughts be like, oh, I feel like an imposter and I don't believe it. And I caught myself, I was like, I don't actually even believe that anymore. In opening myself up to the higher guidance and really honoring my intuition quickly and as the most important navigation system in my life, and then opening myself up to higher guidance and wisdom, I feel more safe, more supported, more loved than I ever have. And they were like, you must share that. I was like, okay, I will. All right, guys, I will. They're a good time. We have jokes. We have jokes. Because, in the higher frequencies, it's all love. It's all fun. It's all joy. Comedy is such a part of this. Like, nothing, you cannot. And this is where I think spirituality gives me the ick, and where I really struggle with, I don't know, certain people or teachers or modalities, is like, everyone's taking everything so seriously. And like, that's not the whole point. Like, the whole point of this is for us to have a really good time. And it's hard because sometimes life is really shitty and difficult and heartbreaking. But the whole point is to have a good time. So if you're taking yourself and all of this so seriously, you're missing it. You're missing it. And, in that seriousness often comes, ego and judgment. And like, then you're getting way off course. All right, I turned left. Where were we going here? I think that's the hardest part of allowing flow, because my brain gets really excited. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, how much of this is me and how much of this do I allow just to go and to receive? Okay, bringing it back. So what I was trying to say was, for me, and what I got yesterday was the more I showed up and practiced allowing and flowing and not judging and enjoying and connecting to that just creative channel, the easier it's going to be to just fully channel information and wisdom, which is what I'm being nudged to do without feeling so incredibly self-conscious about it. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. It's almost like you're clearing out the pipes. There's like gunk in there, and that's my humanness. That's my insecurity. Those are my fears. That's my programming. That's my, generational trauma, whatever it is. So that led me to think about how a couple of years ago, after I had the like wild death experience, where, man, it's so funny. People like really, I didn't go looking for this. I know I've said that a lot, but a lot of people do. And it's so funny to me because no judgment, but I think that people think it will be fun. Like, oh no, I like want to ascend, or I want to, and it's like, no, it's really hard and feels terrible. Like, it's so scary and painful, and you get faced with your own bullshit over and over again. So when I had the death experience a couple years ago, it was truly the most amount of physical and emotional pain I'd ever felt. And then it completely rocked my whole perception of like consciousness and how I lived in life and how everything felt, which was very confusing and scary. And there's not like a doctor you can go to. There's no one you can like call and be like, so this thing happened? Like, what is this a sign of? Like, I had to like follow my pings and intuitions and read other people's books who had experiences and really start to trust myself, because there was no guidance for what had happened. And I was exhausted and everything was so different. And in the beginning, my channel got really so much louder. So I spent a couple of months, like, I know I've talked about this before, like it felt like someone would wake me up with all of this information in my brain and then almost like push me out of bed. And I would only feel good if I was like typing what was coming through, which I thought was a book. And that started in like end of January. And by April that and it was taking over my whole life so much that like, I didn't even feel like I had the clients I had, but I didn't feel like I could put any other energy into my company, my job, what I was doing, which was scary because I was like making less and less money. And I was like, this makes no sense. And by April, the actual like flow of information and logical stuff that like made me feel like I was like making something that would be useful as a career move in the 3D reality that would make me money to sustain me. It turned into painting, which I love and studied a bit in college, and I've always loved it. But again, like you're like supporting yourself and all you're doing is painting all day. It's really, it's like the part of my brain was like, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. You're going crazy. You've gone crazy. Like, you've gone crazy. So I'm having this internal battle of like really intense push towards creativity in the form of like painting, and not like great painting and not painting to like show anyone, just like I can't stop. And then I'm not working. And I get to a point where I'm just like losing my mind because this bigger energy form and my intuition and my channel are so much louder and more forceful and feel better to me than my brain, that I finally have to like make a deal with myself that I'm just going to like let go and try. Which when I quieted my brain, I was like, okay, brain, I'm going to have you shut up for 2 weeks and just try to see what happens if I like give way. Cause it almost felt like I fell into a river. The current was strong and I was doing everything I could to like fight the current. And it was so hard and it wasn't working and I was getting really exhausted. And so I was like, what if I just like let go? What if I fully let go and I tell my brain to like fuck entirely off and I see what happens? And then my channel gets really loud and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? I'm like, what, 41 years old? I'm like, this is crazy. And it was beautiful. They're like, Lianna, calm down. Like, unstructured creativity opens your channel. and we need your channel open. And you're going to do other things. It's just not time yet. You need to like practice all of these new things and get these new gifts. So I trusted, and that's what happened. And yesterday was a reminder that that's what this is too. It's like my self-expression, unjudged, improvised, in the moment, connected, is just unstructured creativity that will strengthen the channel. And the channel has beautiful information that wants to come through. So I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense. So here I am showing up every week, really doing this experiment of what happens when I just listen where I quietly and profoundly listen and honor my internal guidance and the guidance of my channel. And I just show up and I do what it asks of me, which feels good. It doesn't feel good to go against it. It always feels like a relief. And what happens if I just allow something else bigger than me to know? Because I've seen what life looks like when I thought I knew, and I pushed and I fought against it, and I put effort into life. I got sick. I was unhappy. I wasn't seeing results. And then I see what has happened since I've allowed myself to surrender, flow, and understand that like I actually don't know what's best. I'm at least 50% of this. So here we are. And I've seen it transform my life. And I encourage you, because you're the only one that knows what's best. So again, we listen with our hearts, right? Not our ears, because this will not make sense to your brain. But you know what it feels like to surrender and do the thing your intuition is telling you to. It's like peace. It's an exhale, even if it's a scary thing. But again, you know it's best, not me. So if this doesn't resonate, turn it off. Truly. And then it's interesting, right? Because our brains are so loud and it's so hard to figure out how to get beyond them. And I accidentally did it. And I was thinking today, how did that happen? And there's a lot of discussion when, first when you become more conscious and you realize, oh, wow, I have more control over my life than I realized. You can get into like this whole world of manifestation. And it's like, oh, you just like make a list and, we're choosing better feeling thoughts and you're manifesting from what you're thinking and, try really hard. And like I went down that road for a little while. It was like, okay, you create what you subconsciously believe and you create what you are ultimately. So if you're looking at your life right now and you're feeling like, I know there's something more beautiful out there for me. I know you feel it, right? There's a pull, there's a tug, there's a frustration with where you're at, or maybe you just want to grow and expand and whatever. I was like, how did I initially get into this? And it always comes back to me for Joe Dispenza for that meditation, which there's a million ways to do it. I know he doesn't resonate with everyone, but accidentally, I went to a retreat. It changed everything. It made me feel so much better that I committed to doing 2 hours a day, because that's what he said he did. And I was really like, when I put my mind to something, I will go for it. Like I will just get up every day and fail less and less and less and less and less. And because in the beginning it was so hard, because are you kidding? Like I'm assuming if you're here, you've tried meditation at least once, and it can be horrible. It can be frustrating and terrible. And it's like, no. And then your body hurts and you're itchy and you're making grocery lists. And so imagine what 2 hours a day feels like, right? There's this, and he would always talk about this, like you're training a puppy. It's just like, sit. So some days I would spend 2 hours training the puppy. It would be like, sit. But there's no bad meditation, right? And over time, I was building this muscle in my brain. And when I thought about what really connected me to something greater and really allowed me to change, right? Because if we're attracting what we are and we don't like what's around us, we got to change what's going on internally. You can do it on the outside, but it will take longer and a lot more effort. And these days, especially with all the new energy that's coming in, it's so much easier and faster to do it internally. So I was thinking, okay, so if I had to boil it down, I would spend half of that time in practicing nothingness, which is very hard for your brain to comprehend. And the other half of the time, for me, either sitting in the feeling of freedom, because that meant abundance, that meant so many things to me. Like that to me is one of my values. So I would spend, 1 hour a day in nothingness and 1 hour a day in either peace or freedom, which really initially the peace started out as satisfaction because I had a really hard time not striving. I always was like striving and trying, wanting more. And I didn't know how to be happy with what I had or where I was. And there was this narrative that I only really was able to discover and uncover last year. That was, I can only be happy when. And the goalpost moved every single time. Every time, without fail, the goalpost would move further and further ahead. So I was never allowing myself to fully be happy and present in the moment. And I know I'm not the only one, right? Like how many times is something so incredibly beautiful happening to you and you're just like, oh, this is so great. Oh, wait, I can't forget about the stuff I'm worried about. So I had to train myself away from that. And that started with like, what if I felt satisfied with my life? And that was really hard for my brain because I wasn't. There was a lot of insecurity. And during part of that time, I didn't even know where I wanted to live. And I was being a digital nomad. And there's a deep intuition knowing, and my late shaman had told me, she's like, you're not doing what you're meant to do and it's going to stop. So there was this deep inner knowing that some things were shifting for me financially. And like, I was not feeling as secure. And I think running your own business, especially by yourself or mostly by yourself, is very scary. And so there was a lot that I felt like I needed. So it was really a push to get myself to even practice what it felt like to be satisfied. And it was funny. I was going down the rabbit hole today of like, okay, how do you explain nothingness? And I think that's almost the bigger thing that allowed me to understand that to use my brain differently and understand there was more room in there than just my thinking mind. And I got a quote from Joe. Because in the beginning, I was like, what do you mean nothingness? So I would picture blackness. He talks about the blackness. I would picture a starry night initially. And even though that was something, it felt like the expanse of space could feel like enough of nothingness. It was almost like I would have to practice like my consciousness coming out of my eyes and going into space. And there were stars. There were still things. It wasn't full nothingness. And then what it turned into was like everything would fade into blackness, and the feeling I would conjure would be sort of like melting into a warm bathtub. So I would sit as, an hour a day practicing that. And, some days you feel it for 30 seconds and then you're like, you have to do this, you have to do that. Your butt itches, blah, 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 blah. And other days I could stay in the nothingness and it was like this beautiful feeling. So over time, it became something that felt really soothing and powerful and wonderful. And I was like, okay, I know there's like a bit of science behind this. So to quote Dr. Joe, the reason we have people focus on nothing and a sense of space, the skill of opening and broadening your awareness to nothing takes your attention off of everything physical and material. So we do that because we now know that it's causing a person to get more resonant and more orderly, and their nervous systems moving into autonomic regulation. The information in their blood has anti-carcinogenic chemicals, chemicals for neurogenesis, chemicals that reduce pain and fatigue in the body and elevate emotional states. It changes everything. So here I am giving my body an upgrade, as well as changing the shape and understanding and relationship of my brain to create more space. And the more I did that, the more I was able to quiet my mind and hear my intuition. And if that's all you ever hear, that's like the most important thing ever. Because that is going to guide you to this bigger, more beautiful life that your brain might get you to eventually, but I know to be true that if you do it this way, it's faster, it's easier, and um, it's more beautiful. I feel like I'm like selling something for $9.95 when I said it that way. But it's funny because often in this experience, I'm watching me want to say things as fact and then want to qualify them or say just for me. But it's funny, I'll feel into it. I'm like, this feels like truth. I'm just going to say it because it's my truth. And I remember that summer after I was painting all the time, I was reading The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. And it was around the time my channel got a lot louder. And it was so interesting because, I had really gotten connected to my intuition. And I trusted it and I listened to it. Not even as much as I do now, but I did. And I got to the chapter where I was in the time that I was dealing with all this, because life is perfect, right? And it will guide you to, your next teacher, the book you need to read, the place you need to be, the job you need to have. Like, if you allow it and you follow the subtle signals internally and externally, like, you are so loved and taken care of. Like, I promise. But it's scary because you are going into the unknown. So I'm reading this book and it talks about, okay, how your internal guidance, like your true, we're not talking about our brain chatter, we're talking about our true intuition. And I keep doing, like, if you're watching me on YouTube, I keep doing it because for me, it feels like it rises from my gut. Like I hear it internally. And it's different for everyone. So maybe different for you. And my brain feels just like kind of the static, almost like in front of my face that like wants to like be intruding. And what is true, like your intuition is always true for you. And if you have channeled external guidance, it's true for everyone. And I read that and I was like, oh my God, holy shit. Okay. So then I started like connecting into like people in my life that I love to get like a word or a phrase or something who I know would be okay with me like channeling something for them. And everyone was like, that's right on. And I was like, what? This is real? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Here, this whole time I still think I'm pretty insane because it's around the time that I like right before I started like channeling like mediumship, and that felt really crazy. So I'm like, on one hand, like, wow, this works, and like, oh my God. And on the other hand, being like, I've lost my mind. I've lost my whole damn mind, which is maybe the point, right? I tried. I lost it. Maybe I consciously let go of my mind and there was so much more available to me. So I recommend, if you are someone that can't tell the difference and it's really loud in your brain, that even simply practice sitting in nothingness and what that looks like for you, whether you listen to music or someone else. And like Martha Beck does, she is an author and she's a life coach. She's amazing. She has like a weekly podcast where she does a little bit of a meditation. Well, it's a short meditation is what I'm trying to say, where she talks about like imagining this space between your ears. And like just you're imagining weird amounts of space in and around your body in the room, which also gets your brain into the same state of like nothingness and practicing that. So I recommend, if you struggle with your brain and telling the difference, calming your thoughts, telling the difference between your intuition and your thinking mind, that's a really beautiful place to start, because you start, and it may take a while. It took months of me like every day getting up and doing this, but you start to create more space. And now it's very obvious to me. And the hard thing for me for a while was, what's the difference between my thoughts and my channel? And because my thoughts can be so tricky, because sometimes I'll start channeling something and my brain knows about it. So it will want to start to get in and like help. So it's really interesting that, it's a quieting of the mind on another level that is so interesting. So today I was like, okay, I'm going to get into this. I'm going to talk about like, whether or not you try it with me, this experiment is another level of me just showing up, doing what feels right, what I'm guided to do, with absolutely no expectation or understanding or knowing of what the outcome is, which is freeing if you can wrap your head around it. And like, what if I can just enjoy this and be in the moment with it and know that like the moment is all we ever have anyway? So if I can fully be connected to myself and enjoy, and I can communicate from a heart-centered place and be my full self, that the next moment is going to be connected, and the next moment and the next moment. And I'm always going to stay on my path. I'm going to stay guided. I'm going to stay connected to myself. And all of a sudden it's going to unfold in something really beautiful. So I sat down before this. I sat down a couple times today to connect to like what I meant to do. And I figured I would share a bit of the channeling that I went through because I was told to. So I asked, what are things I need to remember and bring into this? And they told me your presence and connectedness and love for humanity and what you are doing, like right now, what you're practicing, your willingness to fail and to be open to whatever comes through, no matter what, or no matter how strange or self-conscious. You need to share your willingness to fully be yourself and take up space in a way you never have before, your willingness to let go of judgment of yourself and what others may think, your willingness to share your tender heart and what you feel is important, what you are learning and experiencing, as well as what you want to learn or what you need. Be open and vulnerable. And I asked why, and was told because this is what people need right now more than ever. This will help humans, especially women, rise. Bring your whole energy to this, all of your love, because you are love. We are all love. And I said, why? Why is this the way? And they said, because this is the one that comes most naturally for you. And I asked, is that why I like it? And they said, yes. And I said, is there a message around that? And they said, yes. What comes most naturally to you is what you're meant to bring into this world. What brings you the most joy is what you're meant to do. You come here to overcome the density of the plane and to overcome lower energies and fear, to see how powerful you are, but to create from love. It's always easier to create from love than from fear or hate. It is the most natural. Although you can create from any state you want, you will get what you want when you are creating from that state of love. And I said, why is it so confusing in our minds? Because that is the whole point, to overcome and to rise. That is also a tricky answer to give, because what you're getting into is what's the entire point of the whole thing of life, which you understand but will never fully comprehend in this lifetime, which is true. And it's so funny when I ask certain big questions, I'm either told it's not time to know, or your sweet little human mind will never understand. And I now am learning that that's enough for me. And that to me also is so exciting, because it just feels like, as a curious person who wants to, I just feel like I want to sample it all. It feels like, oh, wow, I will do this in this lifetime. And then on the other side, there's even more love and more I will understand and see and know. And that to me is so cool. I said, I lost my place. Oh, why is one step at a time the only thing that's ever revealed? And I said, because it wouldn't be fun or interesting if you knew the end of a story. Like, you don't want to watch a movie, you know the ending too. And I was like, you're right. And this is, I was like, wow, I feel so supported in a new way because I'm listening more. And they told me that was wonderful, and that is something I should share with everyone. And I said, I'm scared I'm sharing the wrong thing. And they told me, if it's true to you and feels good, then let it out and share it. And I asked, sometimes we just go back and forth chatting. And this is why, you guys, I know people do this with like AI, but truly you can do this with your guides and it's actually a lot more helpful and loving. But I was admitting that, I'm scared to say that I'm an imposter. And, but the crazy thing is now I know that this is true in my heart and it feels better to open up and allow it. And it's so subtle and light and it feels like there's this whole other world. And it's true. When I quieted down and I allowed my intuition to guide me to this space where I was getting other guidance. And now my life is a bit quieter in general, which I know sounds super boring, but there's so much more available to me. And it just feels so light and beautiful and loving. Like there's I feel like, I've lived in a house for 43 years, right? And for the first time, I realized there was an attic and I went upstairs and it was like a whole other house. And it was like more beautiful, more interesting. And, they were encouraging me and they're like, exactly, like you're doing the right thing. You've been told many times. And it was funny. They're like, you're special just like everyone else. Like you're meant to do something important as everyone else is, which is so true, which is why I always come back to it doesn't matter what it is. If it's planted in your heart, if you feel it and you love it and you feel like you need to do it, it's because we all need you to do it. It's for all of us and it can only come from you. So it's imperative that you do it because no one will do it like you, whatever it is. And I said, is there anything else? Open your mind further, sit in the nothingness. And then they were saying when you were playing with the Joe stuff, that's important to share. So I did. Quieting your mind, but first you need to quiet your nervous system and your life, literally how much noise is in your life. Practicing nothingness gives you space to hear more of you. And when you know and learn how to listen to more of you, then you will begin to hear us, your guides, those who are here to help you and who love you. Everyone has them. And now more than ever, it's easier to cultivate this way of listening. And I said, why? Because the changing energy. And I actually wrote it exchanging. So I was curious and I left that in. But I am physically experiencing, and I know a lot of other people are, that there is a lot of new energy coming in and it is changing how I feel physically, how I relate to the world, my gifts. It's exciting. It's interesting. I don't know where it's going to lead, but it's raising everyone's vibration. And I said, I don't understand. They said, there's new energy coming into the world that is raising everyone's vibration, whether they are aware of it or not. Yes, some at faster paces than others, but with the ones who can feel it, it's easier to hear our higher frequency. But what people don't understand is that you have to connect to some form of self-love to really hear your intuition and trust it and act on it. So getting people to love themselves like you were in your first program is the first way in, because your intuition is at the level of self-love or love. Even if you don't love yourself all the time, it's a very self-loving thing to do. And the more you love and honor yourself and create space for it, the more you can hear it. So that I thought was really huge. And I hadn't connected to that before, but it makes a lot of sense. And what they were referring to was during the pandemic, I felt really called to do a group program that was in many ways channeled, and was a really beautiful lesson in following my joy versus following my brain. Like another one, I keep learning this lesson over and over again. But I had this business coach who was like, okay, we're going to create, everything you've learned. And I'd been health coaching for a while and I had healed my body and I'd done a lot of meditation. So I had a lot of different information and I was on a spiritual path, which I was very afraid to share. I was very afraid to integrate. So I very quietly integrated that. But initially I didn't want to. I just was like, okay, what's going to sell? What do people need? I did the thing where it's like, what is my ideal customer? What is, it was like, I was stuck and I spent months trying to make this thing from the level of the brain. And finally it was getting closer and closer to the time where I was supposed to launch this thing. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like I don't know. And like, I'm not enjoying this. And I kind of threw everything out and I was like, what am I most excited about? What am I most, what have I been helped by? What do I want to share? And that got me into the level of love and in my heart. And boom, creativity poured through me. And what happened was like I put that out into the world and that was supporting me for the next couple of years. And here I was thinking I'm just helping women kind of optimize their physical and mental health. And at the end of my first cohort, it was brought to my attention that I was like teaching self-love. But again, I didn't know that and I couldn't have known that. And I spent the next couple of years really trying to help women with that through their improving their physical and mental health. And, to further that, right? Because I feel like, and I've had a few different past life regressions where I've seen in many, many lifetimes, I'm always helping women and sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully. And there's a lot of anger and frustration. But here we are again. And it's like, okay, love is the way in, right? So I got into my heart. At the level of the mind, I was completely stuck. I couldn't get the thing I needed to come together. But when I went into the level of the heart and the joy, that's where creativity, right? That's where your channel lives. So it was just coming out, like all of these ideas, the whole structure came out in no time and ended up being this really, really beautiful thing that supported me. And honestly, up until this point, and maybe even more so then, was the most self-expressed, the most aligned, the most confident, the most beautiful I had ever felt. Like I had fully arrived, like my whole life had made sense. And up until that moment, I was meant to do this thing, which slowly and surely I'm getting glimpses of that again, which is the best feeling in the world. And I want that for all of you, right? But your intuition is at the level of self-love. And it is a very, very important act of kindness towards yourself to listen to it and to open up to it. And the cool thing is in honoring your intuition over and over again, you are, and this is coming in right now, you are unknowingly raising your vibration really slowly. You are unknowingly changing what I did. I fast forwarded with doing all that Joe Dispenza work, but you are changing what you are. And again, if we go back to we attract and we create what we are, and you want your life to be different, get in your body, get connected to your intuition and listen to it, because what you're doing, that is a very powerful form of self-love. And that is a very powerful way to change your trajectory, who you are, what is available to you, and how much you love yourself. It is a powerful act of self-love. And it's so interesting to me that we're in an interesting moment. And I feel across the globe, more and more women are getting really angry about where we are. And I don't think it was an accident that in my lifetime, and I know lifetimes my mother's, and, for many, many years, we're really taught to, well, in general, go outside of ourselves for guidance, right? Like take your body to the doctor like you would take your car to the mechanic, like it's none of your business how you feel. When truly I healed through following my intuition and connecting to the right people, but that's what gave me the guidance, right? And that's what put me in the right places, in the right rooms, connected me to the right intuition. When I went to a bunch of doctors and everyone was like, I don't know, go on steroids. But then you combine the weight loss, fashion, and beauty industry telling us that your body is wrong. So if whatever it is, too fat, too thin, too big, too small, your mustache is too dark, you have the wrong pants. If you never feel good in your body, you won't listen to it. Why would you ever listen to this thing that you hate? They teach us to hate our bodies because it completely cuts us off from our power. And whether they mean to or not, that's what's happened, right? Like I'm not into conspiracy theories, but it is very convenient, isn't it? So loving yourself. And it's so funny too, because health coaching for 10 plus years was so fascinating. And oh my God, one of my good friends who's been still doing it, one of the companies she worked for just replaced all of them with AI, which I find just so sad. She was not thrilled, but we both were connecting over how sad that is for the clients, because there's something very special about the intersection of working in that, because you kind of take over where mental health and like physical health, like doctors and psychiatrists leave off, and deal with all the stuff in between, and can help guide people towards like better mental health as well as better physical health at the same time. And just you create this like loving space for people to heal in. And the amount of women who would come to me because they didn't like their bodies and they wanted to lose weight, or it was, it was often really smart, accomplished women who, like, I just remember once I was working with the head of some university, and she was brilliant, and she was still worrying about her butt and like thighs in her like 50s. And I just was like, I wish we could just take this part of your brain out of your head. Like, there'd be so much space for you to like create and enjoy and connect. And like, what would the world be like if we could like quiet that nagging voice, right? And like connect you to just love and creativity. But so often I would say to women, I'm like, wait, like, yes, we can like change your diet. Yes, you can exercise. We can do all of these things, and they're good for you, right? But also, while we're doing that, like, let's connect you to loving yourself more. And no one wanted to do it, because it was like, well, if I love myself, I like wouldn't accomplish anything, or blah, blah, blah. I would let myself off the hook, or I'm going to get fat, or I'm going to get lazy. And it's like, absolutely not. You're going to be kinder to yourself. You're going to heal. Like, it's very different. Like, I promise. But no one wanted to go down that road. And I think it's hard. It's not an easy road to go down. So again, just getting quiet, creating space in your life, even if it's a couple of minutes a day, to connect to like what you feel like you really need, and listen to that, whoever you are. And this is not just for women, it's for everyone. And then being brave enough to follow those directions is wildly important. And so then I asked, what about the mind, right? Because everyone I talk to, when I get them connected or try to get them connected more deeply to themselves, often what I would hear is like, how do I tell the difference? And they said, the mind is just a chatterbox that needs to be understood. Like you always said, it's a tool, and it must be used and understood for what it is. Humans are evolving, so the need for the brain is changing. And that makes sense, right? We don't need our brains in the same way because of the rise of AI, right? We're hiring out someone to think for us, and be careful, because you don't want to do that too much, right? But there are many things that's really helpful for. So understand your brain is just a tool, much like AI. We want to use it that way, and we want to direct it, and it can be this brilliant, helpful thing, but we don't want to let it run the show, especially if we're tired, especially if we're hungover, especially if we're chronically eating the wrong thing, or listening there's never silence, right? You're filling your mind with TV and podcasts, and there's just never space, because it's going to be full of stuff that maybe is good and some stuff that you don't need. And again, like, the more tired you are, pay attention to your thoughts, especially like hungover. Oh my God. See how your brain talks to you. Like, eat a bunch of crappy food for a few days, see how your brain talks to you. It's not kind, right? So we know that our reality changes based on what we put in our bodies, how we treat ourselves, and our mind, the way our mind speaks to us changes. So understand that is a powerful tool, but it is that. And there is this bigger part of you that knows, that will guide you. And that's more important than ever to understand and connect to. And I said, okay, so what is sort of how do we sum up this episode? And they said, intuition is at the level of self-love, and guides are at an even higher frequency, but it takes being quiet and calming the nervous system and calming your life down. But, if you feel like it's hard to connect, things like cards or pendulums or other people can be a way to connect to your guides. But if that's something you want, getting quiet and connecting to your intuition is the first step. And the more you do that, that will raise your vibration more. And guidance is at an even higher level of unconditional love is what it feels like, which feels different than self-love. But once you get to that, and I don't live there, right? I just know how to tap into it. And I strive to live there, but I'm also a human being that, I don't know, likes to drink margaritas sometimes, or likes to chat shit sometimes, or gets frustrated, or doesn't sleep enough. Like, I don't live there either. I'm like you. But I notice the more I strive to live in that space, the more connected I am, the more guidance, the more love, the more supported I feel. And we are love. We are all love. The whole point is love. You are so loved. You are so supported. You are so guided. And if you take nothing away from that, I just take that. Just take that. And I don't know. I encourage you, if you struggle with your mind, try some form of meditation where you're focusing on space and nothingness. And if you are connected to your intuition, but it's not all the time, I encourage you to experience. I always call it playing the intuition game. If things aren't working, especially if you're feeling very frustrated, or like you're, rolling a boulder up a hill, you're banging your head against the wall over and over again, play the intuition game, which means surrender fully to what your mind says. I mean, obviously keep your responsibilities and take care of your children and do all of those things, but surrender fully in the striving, and then get quiet, get connected, and follow everything your intuition tells you to do, which will be interesting if it's new on your journey and you can't tell the difference between your brain and your body. But your brain will have a lot of reasons for why you should do something. Like it'll convince you. Your brain's a bit like a lawyer. And your body will just have a simple yes or no. And often it'll be felt in the gut, and it tends to, even if it's a hard decision, bring peace, a feeling of peace or expansion. Anyway, I will leave you with that. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being on this journey with me, because this is just an entirely insane experiment. But the more I open to it, the better I feel. And I've learned, looking back at my life, the more I trust the nudges, the pings, the intuition, the guidance, the more beautiful life gets. So let's see what happens, right? Anyway, thank you. And I love you all.